Hello everyone and welcome to Awesome Sharp Weekly. And in this video, I'm going to show you that how you can create a step counting application, a pedometer app in SwiftUI. And we will also make use of the charts system. Now, the thing that you see on the screen, it's coming directly from my device, and these are all the real steps. So there are a couple of things to note over here is that some steps over here are marked with green while the other ones are red. So green means that I have achieved the goal. Maybe the goal is 6,000 steps or something. We can adjust that. And the latest one, October 27th, is kind of like on the main one, which is right here. You can also switch between these different views. So this is a list view, but I can always search and see the graphs. Now these graphs are created by Swift Charts, which was introduced at WWDC. So we can actually use these things. So this is what we'll be learning. So let's go ahead and get started. This video is brought to you by my courses on Udemy. You can see I have a lot of different courses on Udemy about iOS development, Mac development, and even web development. You can see my courses over here with SwiftUI. If you're learning about augmented reality using RealityKit, then check out my course. If you are interested in learning about MVVM design pattern, you can check out that course. I mean, the courses, there are a lot of different courses, and I recently released a brand new course on the Combine framework. I know that most of you really like to work with functional reactive programming. So this is a brand new course. If you have never worked with Combine framework, this is a course that's going to go into more details how you can use it. Now, if you are doing any kind of full stack development using iOS, Swift, and also Vapor, which is server-side Swift, then mastering full stack iOS development using SwiftUI and Vapor, that's the best course that is available. And you can get really good discount for these courses. Check out the link in the YouTube description where I will post a link and you can get these courses for a much cheaper price. So thank you so much for your support and definitely check out these courses. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So I've already created a SwiftUI project and we haven't really written any line of code. This is all the default code that comes with it. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you are working with HealthKit, when you are creating a pedometer app, is your actual simulator or Xcode previews, they're not going to get you the steps. In order to get you the steps, the real data, you will have to actually connected to the device. All right, so over here you can see this is my actual device and it's connected, but make sure that you have an actual device with you and that is already collecting steps information, so you can just plug it in and I'll show you that how you can easily use SwiftUI with a live device. So that's actually pretty cool, so I'll show you that later. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to ask the user for the permission that can we access steps from the HealthKit. So I'm going to go over here and create a new group. I'll call it store. You can call it anything you want. And I'll create a new file. Let's call it health store. Okay, there we go. So the health store will be responsible for giving us the steps, asking for permission. It's more of a wrapper on top of HK Health Store. So first thing, I'm going to go ahead and import HealthKit. Next, I'm going to import observation. And now I can go ahead and create the class Health Store. Since this will be acting as a source of truth, I will use iOS 17 feature observable. So since I added the observation module, the framework, I can now use observable. If you are not working with iOS 17, then you can go ahead and use observable object. That's the same thing. That's fine. Okay. So the next thing that we want to do is we need to create an instance of HK Health Store, and that is going to give us all the information. So I'm going to create Health Store and then HK Health Store. We need to initialize this. So now the way that we will initialize this is we first need to see if the HK Health Store is even, if the data is even available. And you can perform that by simply saying HK Health Store is health data available. So this function, this is going to give you whether the data is available or not. If it is available, then we are going to go ahead and initialize our HK Health Store. So HK Health Store, there we go. If it's not available, then we will have to assign some sort of a error. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a property which is just going to be an error, and we can also create some sort of a custom error if you want, that's fine, and we can assign it like custom error over here in the else block. Great. And you can display the error on the screen. Okay, so we have the health store. The next thing, and pretty much the most important thing, is to ask for authorization, is to request authorization. So we're going to go ahead and create a function in our health store. We will call it request authorization. And request authorization is going to present a dialog to the user asking that, hey, if I have authorization to access the HealthKit steps. So we need to create what kind of thing that we're looking for. Like, we're asking for authorization for steps. So that's what we're going to build. So HK quantity type dot quantity type, and you can see that over here it said something about it's getting obsolete. I don't think that this particular function is getting obsolete or deprecated, but we can use that. So identifier, and you can see there are many different identifiers we can use. So I'm just going to use step count, else we are going to return. So this is going to give us the step type. So quantity type, like what are we asking? So we can use guard let step type, and we can get the step type over here. Next, we will go ahead and unwrap our health store. There we go. And now we can request for authorization using the health store itself. So health store, which is actually of type HK health store, does contain a function called request authorization. And we can share if we are trying to share it. I'm not going to pass anything in the share, so that's fine, but we want to read the steps. And what we want to read is a step type, because that's the one that we are indicating. And you can see over here in the HK quantity type identifier, it's not only step count. This is exercise time, move time, ascend time. Maybe you're asking for, like, if you are, climbing stairs or something, but we just want the step type. Now, request authorization can throw exception, and it's an async function. So we're going to make sure that we wrap it correctly. And now if we're going to get the error, we're just going to assign the error to the last error property. All right, so there we go, error. Okay, so this is great. The request authorization is fine. Another thing that we need to do to perform this request authorization, actually a couple of things, is we need to add something in our info.plist file. Just like when you were asking for maps, if you're using maps, you need to put a key in the info.plist file. We have to do the same thing over here. So click on the project, go to info.plist. You can see that all of these keys are already there, but the one that we are looking for is a little bit different. It's called the health share usage description. So let's go ahead and try to add it somewhere. Health share usage description, and then we eventually also have to do the health update usage description. And this is a string that you're going to type over here. So I'm just going to say this app requires, permission or something, permission to work correctly. Obviously, you should probably type something different, And the other one that we already saw that we need is the health update usage description. So another one we're going to add. Anywhere you can add it. Let's see over here. I'm not sure why it's not allowing me to. It's kind of hard to add. There we go. Health update usage description. Again, the message is important, so make sure that you write some good message over here. I'm just going to copy paste it over here, but make sure that you type something reasonable for your app. So these are the permission things that go in the info.plist file. The other thing you want to do is go to signing and capabilities, and we will add a capability. And in the capability, we can add the HealthKit. So this will allow us for the user permission and to also retrieve information. So HealthKit is added, and you can see the entitlements file created for you. Don't mess around with that file. I mean, you can always click and see all the keys and the values, but HealthKit is now saying yes. All right, so that's good. So these are the couple of things that we added. Let's go ahead and build our application. At this point, we haven't really used the health store that we built, right? So we will have to use that also. So let's go back to our content view. And I'm going to go ahead and use that. Now, I'm using state over here, and I'll talk about that why I'm using state. And the reason is that eventually in our health store, since it's marked with observable, I will have some properties that will be the published properties. All right, so we will be using that later. Let's go back and at least create the health store. So health store equals to health store. There we go, we got the health store over here. And somewhere along the lines, we need to make sure that we are passing or we're asking for permission. So I can use the task modifier, which is already async. So I can say health store dot request authorization. And now you have to make sure that you are running it on a real device. Although as soon as I put this over here, you can already see that in Xcode it is allowing you to do the same thing. And this is something that you should be looking at, you will be witnessing on your real device also. So yes, I'm going to go ahead and say steps which are yes and also allow. Okay. So that is the mandatory thing, but we need to run it on the real device and not on our over here on our Xcode simulator or Xcode previews or simulator, because we won't be able to access the steps. The steps are only available if you are running it on the real device. Now you can use mocks and all that stuff. That is perfectly fine. If you want to go that route, that's perfectly fine. You can do that, but I'm just going to run it on the real device. So one of the ways that you can use SwiftUI and you can use Xcode previews on the real device is by selecting your real device. So this is actually a pretty cool option because it allows you to debug your SwiftUI application, kind of like a live preview on the device itself. All right. So let me go ahead and see how this works. All right. Okay, so what I am going to do is I'm going to switch over here. This is the real device. I'm going to move the real device because we will be using it. So that's the actual device. That's my real device. And you can see that it's on the real device, this kind of dialog comes in. Now on the real device, I'm going to say yes and allow. So this is what it looks like right now. Okay. Now, one of the cool things of doing all of this, is that anytime I'm going to edit something, it's going to update. Now, in order to show you, I will have to kind of like resize the window a little bit so that I can show you these things. So let's say that on the hello world, I'm going to just remove it and I'm going to say hello. See that? On the real device, it's actually changing, which is a pretty cool feature, I think. I mean, this is really cool. Like if you can do that, I think that's really fun that you can do these things on the real device. All right. It's kind of hard to fit, but there we go. So now we can actually see the real device, which is pretty cool. Sometime it will get stuck, but we can figure it out. But it's pretty cool that on the real device we can update live. All right. Okay, so now our app has requested the permission, and that's great. The next thing we want to do is we want to calculate the steps. Now, in order to calculate the steps, we'll go back to the health store, and we will add a function to calculate the steps. Calculate steps. Async, and it can also throws. Okay. So in order to calculate the steps, we will need access to the HK Health Store. So we're just going to go ahead and unwrap that. Next, we want to access the steps like a week before, meaning 7 days ago, and today if there are any steps today. All right. So for that, we're going to go ahead and use the calendar API and go back and set the start date to be 7 days ago. And the reason is that we obviously don't know how many steps we're going to take tomorrow, so we don't know in the future, but we know in the past because our HealthKit on our phone is already collecting that information. So we can do that. Next, we are going to create a step type, which we can easily do that by using HK quantity type and passing in the step count. So this is going to give us access to the step type, because this is what we're trying to ask, that give me all the steps. All right. Now we do want all the steps for every single day. So we're going to create a date component with day 1. So every single day we're going to get that. And we are asking for the whole week. Basically, it will be depending on the start date and the end date. So over here, we're going to get a predicate, which is called predicate for samples. So it's going to create this query, this particular predicate, which is based on the start date and the end date that we're providing. So that's kind of like the where condition that this predicate for samples mean the data that you're going to be retrieving, this is going to give us for the whole week. All right. Next, we will use so this is where we created the query part of it. Next, we're going to create the actual predicate, which is quantity sample for the step type and this week. All right. I'm sorry. This is the predicate because we're passing it over here. And this is kind of like the sampling part of it. All right. Now comes the important part, which is the HK statistics collection query descriptor. That's a long name, right? HK statistics collection query descriptor. And over here, we can pass a couple of different things. We can pass the predicate over here, steps this week. That's also a predicate. And options over here. We want cumulative sum, which means that we want all the steps to be added together. And it will be, the anchor date will be the end date. Anchor date simply means that the end date, which I guess in this case, you can see the end date is today's date, that will serve as the anchor. I mean, you will just go till over there. All right. Interval. An interval component, we will over here specify every single day because we do want the steps for every single day. And this is going to create our sum of steps query. So once we created that query, now we can just simply execute it. And we can execute it by saying sum of steps query dot result. And this result will be for the health store. We can simply pass in health store and we will get the steps count. Now, this steps count that you're going to get, this is not really going to be like a number or something. All right. So if you try to see, let me go ahead and write it out over here. But if you try to see what steps count is HK statistics collection. And this is a collection that you can basically enumerate. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. Before we enumerate, again, since it's giving us the statistics or we're enumerating, we have to tell it that enumerate from where to where. So over here we can say steps count dot enumerate statistics, and you can see over here that you can provide the start date and the end date. So let's go ahead and provide the start date, and let's go ahead and provide the end date, and we're going to get the statistics, and this is just a pointer. We can say stop over here. Okay, so we got the start date, we got the end date, we got the statistics. Now in the statistics, we can sum up those steps that we're taking. For the whole day, we can sum up those steps. So let's go ahead and sum up those steps. There's a function on statistics called sum quantity. We can use that function, we can get the double value, and we can simply count for all of the different steps. All right, so this is where we are right now. Now, once we have the count, this is the count for the steps for a particular day. All right. The next thing that we want to do is put this count somewhere. So for that, we can create some sort of a model. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a models. And what I'm going to create will be a simple model. Let's call this step. So in the models, I'm going to add a new file, and we'll simply call it step. So this model is going to represent the count and the date of the steps. And since we want these steps to be displayed on the UI in SwiftUI, we're going to also use identifiable, so we can kind of like loop through it in the list if we want to. Let's go back, and now we should be able to simply create an instance of the step, pass in the count, pass in the start date, and if the step dot count is greater than 0, then we can add the step in steps collection or steps array if you want to. So we'll say self.steps.append the step. Now there is no such thing as steps right now, but that is the publish property that we can create, and we don't really have to mark anything with publish anymore. And the reason is that we are using observable. So all of these properties that we are creating are already published properties. All right, so we got the steps over here. Great. And yeah, once it's done, our steps will contain something. So let's go on the UI now, meaning on the content view. And let's just check it out, that how we can make it work. If it is returning us the steps, after we perform request authorization, we can also try to perform like get all the steps by calling it calculate steps. And if there's a problem, we can write, for now, we can just display it on the print statement. So now over here, we're calculating the steps. When the steps are actually calculated, the steps array, which is part of the health store, gets updated, which is this one, because we are adding the steps. Let's go ahead and just try to loop over them and see what it does. So I'm just going to go and probably replace this part with a list, and we can just loop over it. So health store.steps, we will get a step, and I just want to just display it, step.count. So it's a count, so we'll probably be displaying it like this, step.count. All right. Right now, I don't really see anything. Let me go ahead and rebuild this, and maybe our interface will refresh, and there we go. Oh, we got our steps. I mean, that's pretty cool. Like, that's a live steps from the device. So these steps are coming from the device, which is pretty cool. So we got it. We got the steps. I mean, if we want to display the date and something, we can also do that, but we actually got the steps, which is pretty cool. And, you know, it's on the device, so this is actual steps. Okay, so we're on the right track. The next thing that we want to do is we want to create a little bit much better UI than this. So we will be able to create some sort of, let's say, step list view, which is responsible for displaying all the steps in a list. And we can also create functions like if the steps are under 10,000, then mark it red. I guess all of them are under 10,000. It should probably, get some exercise done. But let's go ahead and do that. So what I am going to do is I'm going to create a new group and I'll call it views. And inside the views, I'm going to go ahead and add a SwiftUI view and we'll call it step list view. So this particular view, the step list view, will be responsible for displaying all the steps in a list. All right. And you can see that right now I'm in the step list view. So my actual device, live device, is showing me the preview of this step list view, which is pretty cool. Okay. Steps. And we're going to be passing in the steps, and that's pretty much it. After that, it's all the code that you can type. So I can say steps, and I can just pass in right now nothing over here. You can create some sort of a dummy steps for preview if you want. That's perfectly fine. But I am just going to go ahead and copy some code that I already have because you're just creating a list over here. Nothing more, nothing less. Now there is one function which is called is under 10,000. So let's go ahead and add that function. I'm going to go ahead and create a separate group. I'll call it utilities. And again, in the utilities, we can add a different file. I cannot really come up with a good name for the file, so I'm just going to call it helper. This is an awful name, but right now I'm just going to use that. And it will only have one function. And since none of these steps I've taken are 10,000, so I'm just going to go ahead and go with 8,000 for now, and then probably change this to 8,000, right? Is under 8,000. Okay, but you should probably check the actual steps that are good for your health. Probably, I think those are like 10, 15,000. So update that part. But I just want to show you that what happens when the steps are 8,000, okay? So we have this function. Let's go back and change the name of the function over here. I think we're calling it something else. So we'll call it 8,000 over here. There we go. Now, right now, it's not really displaying anything, but not to worry. We can go ahead and start using this. So let's go back to over here. And I'll just use, what did we call it? Step list view, right? So we'll just use step list view. We have to pass in the steps which are coming from health store.steps. And there we go. This is what it looks like on a real device. So this green number over here means that these are good, meaning they are more than 6,000. 6,000? Or sorry, more than 8,000. And the red ones obviously are saying that you didn't even do your steps. So your steps were, not good. The other thing that I want to do is all of these steps right now are arranged in a bit of a different way. Meaning I want the latest one, which is October 27th, should be on the top. So we can actually do that logic right inside over here, right inside the view. So let's go ahead and create a private property. I'll call it steps. It's going to return an array of step. And we can simply go with the health store.steps and then use the sorted function. So sorted by the left-hand side, and the right-hand side. If the left-hand side dot date is greater than right-hand side, then you will return and you will select that. All right, there we go. And obviously start using the steps right here. So let's remove the health store part of it. And there we go. So on October 27th is now on the top, which is great. Okay. Now the other thing that I want to do is the latest steps, like October 27th or whatever the day is the latest one, whether it's October 27th or 28th or whatever, they should have like a own criteria, meaning they should have their own screen, like this part. Okay. They should be in focus. So let's go ahead and do that. For that, I'm going to go ahead and build another view, and we'll call it today's step view. All right, today step view. Let's go ahead and create that. And in the today's step view, we are only displaying today's step. So again, I'm going to go over here and probably replace all of this. And we don't really need preview for that. But in today's step view, you need to pass in the step, which is hopefully for the today's step, like just for today. And then it will show you those steps. All right. So let's go back now and try to see where we can put that code so that we can see today's step. So over here, we're using step list view. Okay. And we are already displaying. Okay. So we can check something out over here. If let, probably we have to use a VStack over here now because I'm adding multiple controls. And now I can say if let step equals to steps.first, then I can go ahead and say today's step view passing in the step. And there we go. Awesome. So it's giving us all these steps. So that's pretty cool that we got that. The step list view is also showing all the steps. So this is kind of like duplicate, right? So we can remove that part, meaning the steps list view is going to just drop the first. And I believe I have to pass it as an array. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go. So it's gone now. And of course, it's running on a real device. We can also add a navigation stack if you want a navigation stack. This will allow us to add a navigation title. We will call it step by step. That's the name of our app. Okay, it's looking really good now. We got the steps, we got everything over there. The other thing that we really want to do is allow the user to see it in a graphical view. So right now, they're just looking at it from the point of view of a list, which is fine. But I think we can also arrange so that they can look at it from a graphical view perspective. All right. So this means that we need the user to switch between a list, and we need them to switch between a list and an actual graph or a chart. So I'm going to go ahead and add a enum, which will have two different cases, a list and a chart. And this enum we can also extend so that we can display the icon. So this is a really good way to extend the enum. And I can create a computed property icon, which is performing a switch on the self. And if it's a list, then you return a list icon, or else you return a bar chart icon. And now the only thing we need to do is to start using it. So what I am going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and first of all going to create a property in our content view. We'll call it private var display type, which will be of display type, and by default we'll just use a list. You can change that to chart if you want, but I'm just going to use a list for now. And right before the step list view, we can add a picker. So what this picker is doing is it's going through all the cases of the display type, and it's displaying the icon. That's why you can see the icon over here. And the tag, meaning the actual thing when you select the actual value, will be display type. So whenever we change display type, now we can do something. So over here, I can go and I can perform a switch. So switch on the display type. If it's a list, then we will simply go ahead and display a list. If it's a chart, then we will just add a placeholder right now, just call it chart. Okay, so now by default, it's a list. I'm going to move to the chart, and you can see that it just says chart right there. So we need charts also, right? Okay, so looks like it's working pretty good. We just need to create some sort of view that can display the chart. And that's not a big deal because Swift UI charts are actually really amazing, and we can do this with very few lines of code. So I'm going to create a new control. I'll call it steps chart view. There we go. And since we're using charts, the first thing you'll have to do is to import charts. And in order for this to build the chart view, you need to pass in the steps. There we go, steps. I'm not going to use preview over here. You can use preview, you can pass some dummy steps, whatever, that's fine. And now I can use the chart. So that's the chart control that I'm talking about. And we're going to go ahead and perform a for each loop on the steps. Step in, and then we can make a bar mark. And we can make a bar mark with providing the X and the Y. So X over here will be the actual date. So value for the label key, we can call it date, and the value of that will be the date itself. And the Y will be the actual count, the number of steps. So we will use step.count. And we can change the foreground also, right? So over here we can perform foreground style. If it's under 8,000, which is your step.count, if it's under this, then we will go ahead and say red color, this one, dot red color, or else we will just say green. Okay, so that's it. That's your steps chart view. And now we can go back into our content view and start using the steps chart view. So steps chart view, passing in the steps, which are steps. I don't know if we want to pass in steps over here. We'll see. Let's check it out. Okay. Okay, so there it is. It is kind of displaying. The date is a little bit messing up, but the charts are there. I don't think it can display. It displays some of the dates and it's kind of like cutting off some of the other ones, but at least it's displaying something. All right. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that's our application. I'm not sure how we can fix this part. I'll see later on, but it's not displaying for all the different dates, October 23rd and then 25th. I mean, we do have other dates, so why is it not displaying? Or maybe it doesn't have any space to display. I'm sure it has enough space, but it's not displaying those values. I think it's kind of like cutting off right now. All right. So it's able to display those things. And that's it. That's our whole application, right? So how many things we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if we go over here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it is, the graph is correct. It is, I mean, it does have 7 chart or 7 bar chart. It's just the date is a little bit messing up. It's cutting it off. If you find a way to print this in a much nicer way, let me know. But that's it. That is our whole application. We just created a step counter and it didn't took that long. I mean, it's pretty straightforward code. And one of the things that you may really enjoy over here is that we were able to hook up our SwiftUI stuff with the real device, which is actually pretty cool. I actually love it because now I'm getting the real data. I can look at the real data on the real device. I know exactly how it will render, and I can play around on the real device. Everything works correctly. All right. So this was great. Hope you have enjoyed it, and make sure to download this repository. There will be a GitHub link, and also check out my courses. All right. So thank you so much.